This episode of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast is sponsored by EasyRollerDice.com/cup.
I'm in Max. You are listening to Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. I'm in Max. Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
Why, hello, and welcome to Season 22, Episode 8 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Dave.
I'm Stork.
Your mic's not on. Here, hit this. There's a switch here. Now talk.
My name was Dave.
Okay, that's better.
Yeah, you
So
switched.
Put the mic a little more centered, because it's a cardioid mic. It's not a...
Yeah, you know, cardioid mic. You know the difference there? Can't you tell by looking at it?
Harumph.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Dave.
Dave Kazay.
I am.
Not Kadave.
No.
Even though your name
I'm the other Dave.
Dave K.
I am Dave 77.
Yeah,
That's
Dave
right.
77.
For that one.
In this episode of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast, Matthew asks about GMing for newbies. Harold asks, does space combat have to be boring? Yes. And Craig sends a pseudo-horror story about GMing mediocrity. But first, if you'd like to email us, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We're also on all of the social medias. Happy Jack's RPG, all one word. Twitter, Facebook, Instagram.
We're not on Google Plus.
Yes, you are.
Are we?
I sent one up. It may not be Happy Jack's
No,
RPG.
it still is.
Happy
Oh,
Jack's
absolutely.
RPG?
And JackerCon as well goes through Google Plus. As
Oh,
well.
okay. Well, there you go. And if there's not one, just make one for us. It'll be fine. Actually, don't do that to community.
And obviously the Twitch channel if you're watching.
And the Twitch channel. And if you'd like to
And
watch
the
the show
Discord.
live, and the Discord, there's a Discord too. If you'd like to watch the show live, you can go to happyjacks.org/live. We record this show on Friday nights at 7 p.m.-ish Pacific time.
Ish. Emphasis on the ish.
Emphasis on the ish. We were only about 10 or 15 minutes late. I didn't think we were quite as late as we were.
We never did.
Right.
So I've got two kids.
Exactly. So the guys over at Easy Roller Dice, they've launched a new Kickstarter.
Do tell.
I will. Oversized dice cups.
Wow.
Oversized dice cups. These dice cups come with badass. Oh, let me find it. I got it on the soundboard. I mean it. Badass graphics
And a lid.
and a lid. And that's the brilliant part. It's a dice cup and it's a dice container.
How many can it roll? How many D6s can it roll?
Can it hold? It can hold 50
Wow. With ease?
with ease. 16 millimeter D6s.
That's pretty impressive. That
Sure.
holds the most dice in the market.
It does.
If
It
you're
is
playing Hero, you're there.
most bricks.
Yeah.
You may need two.
Yep.
For Hero.
You know, that's great for playing high-level characters or miniature war games or anything you need to roll a ton of dice to play like Hero.
Indeed it is. So if you'd like to go check this out, and I believe it's live now, you can go get yours and make it happen at easyrollerdice.com/cup to go to their Kickstarter. And you know what? Hold on a second.
I like their products. They've always had really
I
good
just-
products, and I actually have a bunch of their stuff.
A little package here.
And not just the free stuff. I actually went to their site and actually bought stuff. It is. I think they set it up originally. It was just sort of they were really good at sort of finding random dice and stuff. But now they have an actual. They're producing stuff. It's great. It's a really great site.
That's cool. Did you find it?
No, yeah, their last microphone back on. Their last Kickstarter. These are their dice trays.
Oh, okay.
Which also have a lid. You can go ahead and open it up if you want.
Thank you.
But they
It's
sent
an
me
unboxing.
they sent me a few
But good.
promo ones. But I backed that one and I got mine. And I use it. It's right here. Here's the one I use right here. It's still got the old dice in it. You can hear them
The
shaking.
old dice.
You know, it would be funny if a whole bunch of snakes popped out.
You and I have a vastly different idea of funny.
Wow.
It's not funny, haha. It's funny like a clown.
Some clowns are funny.
Especially if
Name
snakes
one.
fall out of
Right.
them.
Name one.
Oh, okay.
Oh, it's
hey!
look, it's got it's sort of gray.
Yeah, this was their last. I think this was their last Kickstarter.
Look at.
It's a dice tray and it has
Actually,
a
I
lid.
like that
I
quite
know,
a bit
right?
right there.
No, no, there's only one mic. You have to put it on that face.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, I just put it in.
Yeah. But and it's got like a staging area on the outside and your rolling area in the middle, and then it has a lid. And if you ever need to roll, have 2 dice trays, you can use the lid.
Yeah,
as a
look,
dice
like
tray.
2 dice enter and 1 dice leaves.
Right.
2 dice. Maybe I am Kid Dave.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mad Max Beyond Thunder dice tray. So that was their last one, and I love that thing, and I use it all the time. So.
Nice.
So if you'd like to support the show, support our sponsors, and we'd like to thank EasyRollerDice.com/cup. Don't forget the /cup. Otherwise, just go to the regular webpage, and you can buy all kinds of stuff there. But if you want to find the Kickstarter for the large dice cup with the lid, you got to go to EasyRollerDice.com/cup, and we thank them for supporting the show.
They make good products.
They do.
Really do.
We have announcements.
Oh, announcements, yeah.
Well, first of all, as of this taping, we know that next week is Gen Con, Gen Con 51. Mm-hmm. That's happening, obviously, in lovely Indianapolis. You went to your first last year, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. It was hot and humid, almost like the way it is right here, right now.
That's true.
It actually, this would probably be the only time where I wouldn't miss California weather were I to go to Gen Con.
Okay.
It would be this year.
All right. And actually in 3 weeks? No, 4. 4 is
4
Strategicon.
weeks. Yes.
Yep. They're on Labor Day weekend.
Orcon 2018.
Yep.
I believe.
And, of course, you can find that at strategicon.net.
.net, yes.
Yes. So will you be running anything at that?
Yes, I haven't put anything up yet, though. I'm not sure what I want to run.
That's
I haven't
yours.
figured that out yet.
It is mine.
What about you?
Nope. I might not even be going.
Oh, okay.
Oh, really? Oh, that's too bad.
I don't know. I don't know.
But my kids probably won't go.
Oh, how come?
So, well, they may go on a trip with their mother.
Nice.
So,
Okay.
if they go on that trip, I may actually downgrade my room from a suite to a regular room. I'm just going to make extra sure that they're not going.
Right? You'd be just your luck.
Right.
We didn't want to go. Now you're stuck in...
It's still going to be on the executive suite, executive level.
Because you know people.
I don't like to mingle with.
No, with the little people. I get it.
proletariat. Oh, well, that is Soma.
No, petty bourgeois. Not proletariat.
Oh, yeah.
So at this particular convention, will you be running Moment of Truth?
I probably will. That's probably one of the things I'm going to run, but I'm not sure what setting yet.
Okay. So, and here's the great segue. So, Moment of Truth just recently was put out on beta, or do you consider it?
It's out. It's out. I mean, I'm going to make some revisions because now that it's out in the wild, there's a couple of rules inconsistencies. There's a couple clarifications that need to be made. I know what I intended, but that's not what I wrote. I'm sure.
Well, Sage Dave is going to...
No, I don't know
dismiss
nothing.
it by soon.
But actually,
but also
Yeah.
some of my examples, especially for character creation, the character creation rules changed, and I didn't change the examples. So I need to go in and modify a couple of examples. But people are putting stuff on the forum for me right now, and I will make changes to it. I have the original InDesign files.
so you're also going to be when you make those changes, they're going to go on a drive-through RPG.
It's already on DriveThru RPG.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Pay what you want.
Okay. So I like to throw a curveball to Stu every time I'm on the show. And the curveball is, so now that it's out, Moment of Truth has been a pet project of yours for quite a while.
About 5 years.
About 5 years. And it's been in development.
longer.
But
No, Tappy and I first started talking about it before he moved away, so it's been at least 7 years.
Okay. So
And you and Casey before that.
Tappy is when we really started talking about the actual mechanics that made it into the game.
Okay. So probably about a year and a half, maybe 2, is when you buckled down and actually
Yeah.
decided, okay, I'm going to clean this up, get this actually formalized, and actually make it into a document and put it out into the wild for other people to
Yes.
do. So now that you've done that, now that you've made a actual product that has gone out to other people, both good and bad, what are your first thoughts about that, about the entirety of the experience?
It's a lot of work.
Okay.
It's a huge amount of work.
So I've heard.
Yeah.
So go, please.
Not worth the amount of time I put into it. I mean, I haven't gone and checked recently, but I doubt on a pay what you want model, sales are going to ever get to the point where they're going to compensate me for the time I put into it. You know
Pay
what I
what
mean?
you want is a very problematic kind of business model, but we can get
Well,
into that. Go ahead.
my original idea with the game is I was going to put out the basic core rules of the
Right.
game for free, because you can just go to momentoftruthRPG.com and get them for free. Download exactly the same file you can get off of DriveThru RPG.
Sure.
Because I didn't do the exclusive thing.
No, that's fine.
So, but people can go in, and there have been some people who've thrown a little money at it through DriveThru. But the setting books are the books that I'm actually going to charge for. Those won't be pay what you want.
Okay.
Because like Blood, Blade, and Tusk, there's a huge amount of work in that thing. And
Yes.
it's big.
And Vast Dominions, right?
Vast Dominions is probably going to be the next one, I'm guessing.
Seriously, you're going to do Blood.
Blood, Blade, and Tusk.
Thank you. First before Vast Dominion?
Well, it's closest to being finished.
Huh.
I'm also running it currently.
Sure.
I just started running it.
Beta testing.
And it's also, that's part of it too. Magic System especially, I want to make sure that it's very playable, because the original version of the Magic System was super complex. More complex than it should be, considering the fact that I don't want a complex game.
Ironic.
Okay. I'm hesitating because I don't know if you want to go down this rabbit hole, but
Well, okay.
but I'm curious to know more. Yeah, why not? So, what are you changing about the Magic System specifically? In a high level.
You have specific skills you need
Right.
to be able to do spells, and you have to have these skills control the various forces of magic, right?
Right.
And at first there were 12 of them, I think.
Okay.
So it was.
It's a lot, and you have to put.
It's a lot of skills.
To put a point.
It's a lot of
into
skills to
Yeah.
put points into, because you don't have a huge number of skill points anyway. So
Right.
I scaled that down to like 7, or
Okay.
maybe 8, something like that, and then consolidated some into to simplify that. I've also I threw out what I had for the improvisational magic thing and made it a lot more freeform.
Okay.
It's dangerous to cast improvisational magic,
Okay.
but you basically tell the GM, this is what I want to do. The GM will say, okay, you need this force and this force, those skills.
Yeah.
And then go ahead and roll whatever your lowest is plus your casting, and then there's a bad thing that can happen if you.
But you have that option. It's like you can now cast a spell, whether you know it
Whatever
or not.
you're thinking of, and
Yeah.
the GM can. And there's little hints in there on how to balance. If someone comes up with a really powerful improvisational spell, some of them have kind of a backlash mechanic to them. Like there's a spell where the mage can heal someone quickly, but they actually take on a portion of the damage
Oh, okay.
in minor damage, which is easily healed.
Psychic backlash. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
kind of like yeah.
The reason I ask is because for what I had been writing, which I need to finish, for Skull and Bones, which was the place that I was doing
Right.
under Moment of Truth, and to explain that a little bit, that's actually sorcery and cutlass and sorcery as opposed
I like
to
that.
sword and sorcery.
I like that.
Yeah, cutlass and sorcery. So
Cutlass and cantrips.
there you go. Cutlass and cantrips. And the way that people would do that were through paths. So it was
Okay.
witch paths is what it's called in when I wrote up. So you could say you were talking about the path of Saint Difna, which is one to be able to deal with sea creatures, I think, or something like that.
Right.
And so it was okay. You take that, you roll against it, as opposed to there being skills. So
Right.
I was curious, and it was kind of free form as well, but I hadn't really gone too far into it yet.
Right.
So I was really curious to see it. So
There's an
Yeah.
existing spell list of about 60 spells, maybe, and they say you need to have these forces to use these spells, and depending on what college you belong to, because you can belong to different
That could be a
mage colleges, you have certain spells that you have access to.
Okay.
If you find the formula for a spell and you happen to have the prerequisites, you can just spend some time studying the book, and then you can cast the spell whenever you want.
okay.
So, but you start out with like some basic spells.
So
I love how you put him on the spot so that he could solve the magic thing for you, so you can continue writing the.
Oh no!
the
I
thing for him.
actually I would encourage you to do the magic the way you're thinking of doing it, and not try to unitize it with what I'm doing at all.
well.
Because
It's part of the fact that being a writer and publisher of dirty hippie games, I tend to leave things a little more free form
Sure.
in terms of that,
Right.
because it's a little easier for me. Not that it's better. It's just easier for me to wrap my mind around to say that it's more of a petitioning of forces to be able to see if you can do it, and then if not, then you have a backlash, which is pretty nasty.
Right.
So,
Yeah, there's a
that's-
backlash mechanic in,
Okay.
in the Blood
So-
Book Dust Magic too.
So a lot of work on it. So the InDesign. So what was the biggest surprise of what you experienced while putting this out as an actual product?
You mean as far as the process?
Sure, we'll start there.
I started laying it out. I laid it out myself, and it was okay. And then a listener volunteered to lay it out for me. In the latest version of it, he's credited in the book, and he's basically learning layout and design, and did a fantastic job on it. Added a lot of graphic elements to it and stuff like that. Because for me there's no artwork in it whatsoever.
I knew that.
It's a core. It's a
I know.
core book. But and going around and looking and pricing, art's expensive.
Yes, it is.
Yes, it
Right.
is.
Good art. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Even bad art.
there-
You still have to pay for it.
well, there are a few people on Drive-Thru RPG who are putting out royalty-free artwork,
Yes.
and some of it is licensed for republishing and stuff like that.
Yeah. A acquaintance of mine through Google Plus, James Shields, he does portfolios of different types of artwork that he sells for publication. I don't remember the specifics, so if James is listening, I apologize. I get it wrong, but if you search that out, that might be available just to add a stock art or a specific stock art that's not too generic.
Right, and that's the stock art stuff they have on Drive-Thru RPG is more reasonable.
Yeah.
Price wise, because it's stuff that people have already done, and maybe it was a commission or maybe it wasn't, but
Sure.
they're just putting it out there to be able to basically generate some more revenue off of it.
Okay.
So there's a few things like that I had. Now one of the things that I'm going to try to do, and I've got to get the setting books done before I can really. I started it, but I just can't right now. Is to do like a quarterly periodical.
Really?
That
Okay.
it's going to either include like NPCs and other adventures, and it'll support settings that exist for that.
With your copious amounts of spare time.
With my copious amount. That's why I have to get those things done first before I can go on to that.
Okay.
Because it's just too much.
Okay.
So basically, he's creating a game so he can scratch his journalistic itch.
Well,
so
yeah.
he can actually put out the magazine. That's really what he wants to do.
Right.
Oh, that's perfectly fine.
I was on 7 days of steroids, and I was so sick I didn't even write a zine. Right?
I'm shocked.
I know, so am I.
I'm shocked.
You look buff.
This is when you're the most creative.
If by buff you mean enormous, yes.
No, okay. So, what if you could, outside of the easy advice to people who are thinking about it, which is don't do it, but what piece of advice would you give to people who are wanting to go down this particular path?
Allow yourself an enormous amount of time. Because it once you start doing it, I sort of pieced out, okay, here's the things I need to work out. I need a dice mechanic, and I like to have one dice mechanic for everything, and I ended up having two because there's a damage dice mechanic, which is different.
Right.
But figure out your dice mechanic and character generation, and then you're going to start realizing, oh, I need rules for this. Oh, I need rules for that. Oh, I need rules for falling. Or I need rules
Grappling.
for burning to death.
Encumbrance.
Well, I don't have encumbrance. Fuck encumbrance. I'm not putting encumbrance on it. There's no weights on anything. In fact, there's no costs to anything in the core book. There's a bunch of weapons and all the stats for them. It doesn't say how much any of them cost.
Okay.
That would be left to the setting books. So, but
So when you say more time, do you mean like hours spent
Yes.
or like the overall?
both.
Okay.
Both. Because, I mean, there's all kinds of things that I started, once I started doing it, I realized, often in playtesting, oh, I don't have any rules for this. Healing rules. Forgot to put in healing rules early on. Had to come up with something
Why
on the
would you?
fly.
You know what they are.
Right. Well, no, I actually didn't. Didn't think of them. And but I
it's
think
a harsh game.
I think if I
Because you don't heal.
I'm already starting to take notes on what I would do for the second edition.
Really? Okay.
And it mostly is going to be scaling down and simplifying.
I have to say, just to add to this, that years ago I made a comic book in college and stuff. It was a long experience of it. And the actual creation of the comic book was fine. That was easy. It was the talking to the publisher, getting the money, finding the artist, getting the 4-color separations, dealing with all of that stuff. That's the hard part. Is the actual publishing part. And I think, Dave, you probably have a bigger insight on this because wasn't your first game printed?
Yeah.
Literally?
Oh,
like
yeah.
a physical print.
So
And that's a journey in and of itself.
So one thing, and actually it's something I always say to people who are saying, I want to publish a game. And I know I even said it to Jason about Demigods, which is, do you want to be a game creator or do you want to be a game publisher? And I separated, even though that most of the time it's the same, although not all the time.
No, not
but
at
A
all.
lot of one-man shops where they're doing everything.
I've heard. But the reason why I always say that is to get people to start thinking about the fact that it is a different skill set. That there's the game and then there's the industry aspects.
And just because you're great at being able to design a game doesn't mean you're good at marketing it or talking to a printer or keeping up on your backstock or even packaging.
One of the things that, or one of the people that really are interesting to follow when it comes to the industry is Fred Hicks of Evil Hat, because Fred's very clear that he doesn't really have a chance to write games anymore, create games. He's too busy doing the industry aspects of Evil Hat, and he does a phenomenal job of sending out
I'm
the
nodding
quarterly
because
numbers.
that is not an unusual story.
No, it's
I've heard
not.
this across industries.
But
It's
he's like the
probably
big guy. He's the big name to be able to say, well, I want to know more about the back end aspects of it. Just seek out, Fred on Twitter or whatever, or his website. He talks about it very openly, and it's very enlightening and eye-opening to show the kind of work that he has to put in to be able to have the library that Evil Hat does, the continual schedule that he continually has. For me personally, and I am a 2.5 person shop, that we schedule out what we're putting out easily 3 months, 4 months in advance, and even that's really small because we're only doing.
It's still pretty tight. That's still pretty tight.
Yeah, it's
2 months is very ambitious for a lot of people.
yeah,
A lot of comic books don't even get that.
yeah.
And they're supposed to be monthly.
Unless you, no, I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not
Go
going to
ahead,
make fun of
go ahead.
anybody.
No,
I'm not
you
going to make
should.
fun of
They're
anybody.
not going to buy your book.
Won't
They're too
say
busy
it.
drawing.
There you go. That's true. So yeah, it is a lot of back end work that most people don't consider. Marketing, you mentioned that. It's
Right.
something that you definitely need to continually do all the time, daily, sometimes more than just once a day, to be able to continue maintaining momentum for both what you have out there and also what will be going out soon.
Yeah, see, I haven't done almost none of that.
Except that Stu has a head start because he's been the captain of a ship called the Foxy Boggart for a long time, and
Yep.
and we put out 12 CDs now, and Stu has pretty much has been steering the success of this group by almost single-handedly, and has made great decisions for the most part, and is anticipating the market. And I think he's very astute with this, but it is a completely different skill set than writing music.
Yes.
There's the creating of the music, and then there's the making CDs, marketing, and all that. That's a whole different thing. And it's the same with games. And I think a lot of people go into games thinking, I'm going to make a game, it's going to be great, and everybody's going to love it. Well, no, because you still got to get art.
Well,
You still gotta market it,
people
you still
will.
gotta
You
do
will do it, and you may get it out. It's just that number of people
Right.
may not be the same.
Right.
Right.
In fact, one thing I always suggest to people, is that if you want to know how to do that independent publishing, go into independent music resources about how to market.
Really?
Oh God, yes. I think that the lessons that I personally learned while being in a punk rock band, because that's very do-it-yourself. That's really
Yeah, it is. Fuck the establishment, we're going to make this ourselves. Yeah.
Well, it's not necessarily, screw the establishment. It's based on the fact that, well, we don't care about the establishment because they don't pay attention to us, so we won't care about them.
Dave.
What's that?
You're being polite.
I am being polite. Do you notice how I switched from the F word to screw?
I
See?
did.
I did that for the kids. But seriously, independent music marketing is a great resource for people who are starting out to be able to determine what may need to go into it, the different types of things to consider, both for creation, publication, and just maintaining the ship. So the fact that you, Stu, had the experience doing that actually, and of course the Happy Jacks community there, which was a niche market or a start of the market or the audience that you have, gave you a leg up that wouldn't necessarily be there for other folks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and even this podcast had a leg up because of the Poxy Boggards. Because as soon as we started the podcast, we had 2 or 3 episodes out. I went on the Poxy Boggards mailing list, which at the time had 2,000 people on it. And I said, by the way, if you do any tabletop RPGs, Stork, Stu, and Tappy are doing a podcast every week. Here's the link. And boom! 400 or 500 listeners. Right off the bat.
Before I forget, if you take away nothing about this, and trust me, you will, but the one thing I always say for people who are starting out to put out their own games or what have you is to develop your mailing list, because your mailing list is going to be the people that you need to depend on, not just in terms of your books, but also help get the word out, to provide guidance, and those are the people who are going to be the first step in the long journey that you're going to be taking.
And there's the loyalty factor too.
Yes.
You're not going to be able to maintain a schedule or anything without that pressure, without that deadline.
Yep.
If you don't have a mailing list, you're just going to go, I'm not going to do this anymore. It's actually like...
Well, you're throwing it in ether. You truly
I've got
are.
300 people depending on me to get it out by this date. I mean, I always work best under a deadline. I don't work well under pressure, but I work best. It's like everything needs to be done by this point, and I need to get it done. And a mailing list, if you promise people a product, more than just getting it out there, they are waiting for it. They're sending emails, and they will kick you in the ass to get it done. Because I guarantee you, in the process of creation, there are long, dark moments when you're sitting in a room going, I don't want to do this anymore. Oh yeah, this is fucking hard.
And then
screw this.
The sun comes up the next day, and you're still going, I don't want to do this anymore.
I still don't want to do this. I don't know, why am I putting myself through this? And you're laughing uproariously because there are long, dark moments where you're just like, this isn't worth it. And then these emails come in, and you're like, I promised them.
You know why we do this? For the fans.
Well, no, you do it because you don't want to be a douchebag who's like, I did promise you I would get it out by this date. God damn it. And I work best by having that deadline. Otherwise, if it's open-ended, it won't get done. And I think that's true of all artists. If it's open-ended, Dave, will it get done?
No.
I don't give timelines.
I can't remember. Actually, that was one of the best things when I started getting serious about it. I actually sent an email out to different publishers and creators out in the industry to say, what piece of advice would you give yourself that you know now that you didn't know when you started? And 2 of them literally said, do not give deadlines because of that very reason.
Well,
Mic drop right
so
there.
don't listen to me then, because I need a deadline. Otherwise, I won't get it done.
Oh no, you can have a deadline, but you just don't tell what other people.
Oh, I see.
You don't tell what that is, because then it's all magic.
Yeah, and you do have to build in a cushion for stuff to go sideways, like when the printer prints everything or like wrong, and you're like,
We call
it's
that
supposed to be out
slap.
next week.
Or float, and whatever you think it's going to be, double it. Yes.
There you go. Do you ever seen The Money Pit?
Yes.
Okay, The Money Pits is it's an old movie.
Tom Hanks.
Yeah, and it's about building a house and stuff, and the contractor's always saying 2 weeks. It's only going to be 2 weeks, and whenever you talk to a publishing artists, the typesetters, it's 2 weeks. It's always going to be 2 weeks, and it turns into how long, Dave? 4 months? Easily.
The reason I'm chuckling is because when we were doing Bedlam Hall, which was the last thing that we published, we were really thinking that we had a lot of runway because we were expecting at the time to have the book published and ready to go for that Gen Con that we went to. And
If you guys haven't seen Bedlam Hall, it's a beautiful book. It's out.
oh yeah,
Finally.
monkeyfunstudios.com.
It's awesome. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
But that's not my point with this. So we
Well,
thought,
my point is, finally got done, and it's gorgeous up to his standards.
but that took forever. I mean, flat out, that took forever because the issues that came up with it had nothing to do with whether or not it was written or the artwork or layout or anything like that. It was literally the last minute printing that came up. You didn't expect it, which, there was no way to do it. And I went round and round with my publisher, who I will not mention on broadcast, but they had a lot of difficulty getting what I wanted from, or I had difficulty getting it from them, until finally I had to call in favors from the Vampire Mafia to basically go in there and threaten them to get it to happen. Well, not threaten them, just to speak very quietly to them, and it made it happen. So
it's a whole different world.
Yes.
Trying to get things done up to your standards and stuff. And that's the sad thing. I mean, I wanted to be a comic book artist for years, and you can make your own comic book, and that's great. What we revel in is the creation of this thing. Bringing it to life and getting out to the people, you have to deal with so many broken toys and bad systems and red tape.
Well, see, I didn't actually print.
I don't even know why I'm doing this anymore.
That's one of the reasons I didn't.
You have the luxury now,
because
in this modern age, that it's almost a detriment to print.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's a detriment to print.
You'll just be sitting.
But boy, I'm glad I didn't print without it being out there for a while, because now there's a bunch of stuff I have to fix.
Oh yeah.
Let me ask you this: when after you printed your first stuff, did you have to go back and make some changes and revisions, or did you just
for
live with
Spirit
it?
of 77?
Yeah, did you live with it?
The clever answer is me looking at the camera saying, no, it was perfect. But the truth is that there were certain things that we literally just decided we're going to live with this. And
was there anything that happened later, like Stu is discovering that people found loopholes or were able to break it?
No, it's part of the apocalypse. There's no rules anyway.
Wow.
hate you.
It's a transmission specialist. You can tell by the way that beautiful transmission just went right over you, attached to that bus.
Listen here. First of all, there are a lot of rules, okay? But we like to call them guidelines.
Okay.
All right. We encourage certain things. We do that. Are we gonna box about this?
No,
are we
we're
going
not.
to?
No, we're not really. We actually
No,
have a lot
that's
of
next
emails
week.
to read, so we should.
I guess you're bringing me back next week.
Because Tappy's going to be here too.
Okay.
He's like, yeah, it's someone's.
Yeah, you
I
should
don't.
come back next week.
There's a great email next week about PBTA.
I
got it. I'm like, finally.
Okay. So
Come back next week, and you and Tappy can hash it out.
No.
Awesome.
So I do. Getting back to the PBTA stuff is a different thing, but publishing. There were things that had come up in terms of, and I'm trying to think of the best scenario. I know that there probably was, but not for the core book. I think that there were typos definitely that made me go, oh, geez, Louise.
So you play tested enough out of it, or the
Oh yeah. We had
solid
tested.
enough that
We had started testing Spirit of 77 easily 2 years before we actually had published, and we were doing it. We actually were testing as soon as we had probably maybe 20 pages originally written, because we wanted to just get it out into a scenario to say, let's see what happens.
yeah. So let's see what happens, right?
Yeah.
Get up and rocking, and then we can.
Yeah, it was
we
total
can
smoke
straight up
tests, and it was actually probably the best thing to do, because it wasn't necessarily just the rules that we were testing, but it was also us figuring out, well, what do we want our adventures to look like?
Now, you're actually working with a proven system that's sort of been out there and working for a while. Stu's actually building it from the ground up.
Right.
So he's going to run into problems that you didn't.
Yeah, well,
have,
that's
just
actually
like,
the other thing is that
I had hours in front of Small Roller, which is a little program, a PC program, to do dice. It tells you what dice probabilities are under different circumstances. It's actually very flexible, so you can you can set it up to do a dice pool and see, okay, how many dice with what the target number is, how many successes, and all the little charts and things, because you need to know that stuff going in when you're.
just Savage Worlds it. I don't know what
Right.
your problem is. No, the challenge with your system, which is a fine system, is because you had it based off of a universal type of environment.
Right.
You did have to have the kind of edge case, analysis that I probably wouldn't have had, because most of the games that I've been doing are very setting and genre specific. Spirit obviously there's not a lot of although magic system, well, there kind of is, but not really formalized.
And the Apocalypse system had been out and worked.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It had been
He's coming
verified.
up with the Mont system.
Although,
right now.
you're doing a lot of creation when you're coming up with playbooks and moves. And
I'm
things
not.
like that.
No, that's not my point. I'm not belittling that at
Oh,
all.
no,
But
no, I didn't
you're
think
actually
you were.
creating an entire game engine yourself on top of coming up with specific stuff as well.
Oh, yeah,
he's
definitely.
He's got more pitfalls than the rest of us, which is, that's an exploit. I had no idea, and now it's printed. Oops. And now I need
And
to
there
fix that.
are a couple of those that slip through. Yeah. Dappy found one. Big surprise.
It also, one of the pitfalls that I tried to fall into, I really have to say that because I was not perfect, is that you have this concept of saying I'm going to have balance for every type of
Everything's gonna be
scenario.
fair. It's
And you
gonna
know
be
what?
great.
Sometimes game
Yeah.
systems aren't going to be balanced, and that's
I'm going to say that none of them are.
I don't think you should try.
well.
I mean, you don't want to have the thing where you have one player steamrolling over everyone else.
Yeah.
So you have to have it to a certain extent. But
Sure.
I'm going to say that no game system is balanced. There's some that are maybe better than others, but you can exploit any game system if you're clever enough or if you really want to.
Yeah.
There's nothing hacker proof.
Oh, well, the challenge with PBTA games, and just speaking from my limited experience, your mileage may vary, is that it requires a lot of the heavy lifting and the guidelines of not breaking the system on the responsibility of the player, right? Because the players, are contributing to the story, so you really have to say, okay, I'm doing this, but I'm not going to go beyond what I think is fair for the story, because the player and the GM have equal stakes in the game. So,
Gosh, why would players honor that ever? That happens in every game. You find people that they find it.
that's why you're no
We're-
longer
we're-
the
we're-
bank when
You're
we
right.
play Monopoly,
Fair
because
enough.
you cheat like a bitch.
Fair enough. 1 for you, 2 for me. 1 for you, 3 for me. But
I'll make you some change.
I understand. And
No,
this might actually be. We should just get the two of you guys, maybe with Tappy and maybe even Casey, and you guys get together and just talk about game design and stuff, because it's I think everybody has delusions of grandeur. We want to write a game. We want to write a comic book. We want to write a book. But after the actual writing,
You start with them,
Think to
but
yourself, I'm going to write a book. This is going to be great. I'm going to write. I've got this great fantasy novel based on my exploits.
well, I'm laughing because you start with them, but I'm sure both Stu and I can say that, we've lost those delusions of grandeur now.
and that's the point, is that after you're done writing, your one draft, and you hand it to people, they're like, this sucks, and this is wrong, and this is wrong, and then you get all, well, you guys, why would you, this is my, like, every writer has to go through rewrites. You have to work on this stuff, and it's not fun. The actual creation of something that is good is not fun. What was it? I think it was Ray Bradbury. I was lucky enough to hear him speak at my college. Said, I do 3 rewrites minimum.
Right. Oh yeah.
And if you write War and Peace, I can't imagine rewriting it 3 times.
Oh, I don't
Right?
remember. I don't remember which author it was, but there was an author. I took a magazine journalism class in college.
That was you?
That was me.
Huh.
And there was a lot of people in that class who, some of them wanted to be like, like feature writers.
Sure.
But there were a lot of people in there who were like aspiring novelists.
Sure.
And Hemingway? I don't remember who it was, but our professor was telling us that some author, I think it was Hemingway, before he would write, when he would sit down to write,
He would drink 4 glasses of scotch.
he would read the entirety of what he had written so far, and then continue writing.
What I read was...
But I don't know if that was Hemingway. I don't know.
It might have been, but what I had read is that when Tolkien got to certain points and he realized, I should have gone this way with the plot, he would start from the very beginning and start rewriting from...
Wow.
Yeah, and so...
Well, that way at least you know you're not going to miss anything.
But here's the point. The creation part is actually the fun part. The wrestling it into a shape that is actually digestible for everybody else, that
yeah.
you can read or that you can play or that you can watch or look at, is the hard part. And it's not fun. It's killing your babies. You have to edit. It's talking to a middleman in order to get it published, and they're not reasonable, and they're not nice, and they cost money a lot. All of that stuff is not fun, and yet at the end of it, you end up with this product, and it's at the end of the day, you're done. You're like, I don't even want to see this effing thing anymore.
That was something Jason Morningstar said, is that you know when your game is done when you are sick. I think it was Jason Morningstar, when you are sick of it and do not want to look at it. Right. That's when you're ready to put it out in the world. And whether or not that's true or not, I couldn't say, but I sure as shit understand it.
Right.
You
A
know,
work of art is never finished, only abandoned.
Right. and so that's the fallacy of creation. Is the creating part is the fun part. That's the neat part. It's getting it whipped into shape for consumption by the media or anybody.
In any book you're going to try to do, even if you're talking about something that's reasonably rules light, like Powered by the Apocalypse, you're still. I mean, you've got to come up. Fun parts, coming up with the movies, coming up with the playbooks.
Yeah.
That stuff's probably fun. But then you have to sit down.
Art.
Then you have to sit down and write the whole book. You have to write your introduction. You have to write your introduction to role playing if you're going to include something like that in it. And then you're going to have to go through and explain everything, because you can't assume that someone's knows Apocalypse World like the back of their hand, right?
So the new game that I'm working on, A Town Called Malice, is not powered by the Apocalypse. It's based off of a system called the Story Pillar system that was put out by Protagonist Industries, Home by Dark. And it's actually very driven by more of a fiasco dice pool setting. Mm-hmm. And the reason I mention this is that a lot of what I had to do was, while writing, make sure my examples really were clear, not just because to read it, but to make sure that I was 100% sure of the system, but also the fact I was explaining my take on the system more than just the narrative, me explaining the rules, to make sure that I gave a working example of it. And that can be more challenging than you'd think,
I love working examples. Whenever I read the books, I go through the working example, and I spend time on that, because that makes more sense to me than the abstraction numbers and such.
They'll do that in a moment of truth if something went wrong.
Well,
I've heard that.
We can go on with this. We can make a whole show about this. But
Hey, why don't we read a letter?
Let's read an email. GMing for newbies. This is from Matthew. Greetings, exalted ones. I'm sure you've had this question like this somewhere in the backlog, but I'm not going to go digging. I don't blame you.
Yeah, me either.
So, I just had my 10-year high school reunion, and long story short, a lot of screaming and a lot of hugging. That's a 10-year high school reunion.
Is it?
Everybody...
Right?
It's only 10 years. They haven't all lost their hair yet.
That's right.
And they're not that fat.
20 years, it's like,
oh my.
Yeah, we all got old.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you really let yourself go.
I can't wait for my 30.
It's 20 years.
My 30 is going to be coming up. 24.
You actually go to this thing.
I went to my 10 and I went to my 20.
You're a brave man.
They're fun.
Okay.
They're fun. I saw people that I talked to 20 years ago. It's a 10-year high school reunion, and long story short, I'm going to be DMing a game for some of my old video gamer friends from high school relatively soon. Now, I have plenty of experience GMing, been doing it for just over 10 years, but not since my first game have I GM'd for newbies.
Oh.
Normally, as a GM, I try to run a very sandboxy game. My goal as a GM is often just to get out of my players' way as quickly as possible. I might do something sort of on the rails to start a campaign, but with the goal that the players exiting that first adventure with the resources and contacts to pursue the things that interest them. Good on you. However, for new players used to playing World of Warcraft and straightforward tactical video game RPGs and other video games, I don't want to end up giving them decision paralysis by overwhelming them with options and potential plot hooks too soon. So I ask you all for advice on how to make the first game special for some new bloods. What should I do? What should I not do? How should I change up my GM style, if at all? P.S. After you discuss the above, I told him I would, quote, run D&D for them, and that's what I intend to do. That is, run D&D 5th edition. But I usually run GURPS, or other games. I didn't get a
You were
yeah out
waiting
of
for that
guy.
the entire time.
I was.
I didn't get a yeah out of that guy.
I did. You just couldn't hear me over there.
You watch your ass. I was just watching Blazing Saddles. I just got to the Lily von Stupp scene.
Stupp.
La 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 la. I'd love that.
Only you and I know why. That's fun. Well, in this room, you and I would know what this movie, because she's actually lampooning
The woman who sang Marlene Dietrich.
Marlene
Yeah.
Dietrich,
Right.
right? Who was German, and then she was a method actor at the time when there was no method acting, and so she said they don't know how to sing, so she actually sabotaged her singing career for that role. It's convoluted. There
Lily Marlene.
you go. Yeah.
Lily Marlene.
Not to mention the pun of her character's last name being Stupp.
Oh yeah. What do you mean?
Look it up, kids. Google. You'll find it.
And I mean, there's American Indians or Native Americans in there
Poon.
who are speaking
Yiddish.
Yiddish.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were talking about the last name of Poon being American Indian.
No.
Okay. That's from Fletch, back when Chevy Chase was funny.
Was he, though?
He was just drunk.
No, I like Fletch.
Fletch is a funny movie.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It's better than Modern Problems.
Never saw him on him.
Oh, I have.
It doesn't hold up.
No,
okay.
it doesn't.
Fletch holds up.
Wow, you brought up Modern Problems.
Zach and I sat down and watched Saving Private Ryan.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's heavy.
What? He wanted.
Did he cry?
No.
In the first 5 minutes, or is it 5 or 10? Actually, the landing scene. He was okay.
No.
with that?
Yeah.
He's played no
Kids.
video games.
Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that in the theater and being absolutely.
Well, he started asking me questions about Normandy, about the Normandy landing, and like how many people died? So there was a lot of American soldiers died because there was some problems with some shelling and stuff, and they thought they hit some spots and they didn't hit them, and then all of the airborne units got dropped in the wrong places because of course all the pilots of the planes were being shot at and they don't want to die.
And you lost him after. Well, there were problems, and
No, but he's like, well, he says he wanted to know about the landing.
Okay.
And I said, well, I have this movie, and if you want to watch the sequence, it's actually not the opening sequence, but it's
close enough.
Oh, yeah, true.
Because there's the old man in the
framing device.
right. But he watched it. He's like, wow.
And at the end of the movie, you find out he's Kaiser Soze.
But I mean, it's like some of those. What are the LSTs? What are those boats called? That landing craft? I can't remember what they were called.
For now, we will call
Okay.
them LSTs.
There's some of those boats. Not one guy got off.
Yeah.
They all died. It's like they should have just left the flap up.
They're made out of plywood, dude.
It's crazy.
And I think, actually, as a side note, I think when that movie was released, a lot of World War veterans went to it and then warned their friends, like, be careful.
There were people who there were veterans of that landing who had trouble watching it.
It was a full-on trigger warning.
Because because they do the whole thing with the shaky camera, and it's like almost sped up a little bit, so it's like more frenetic and more frantic than it would be just sitting comfortably in your chair watching it.
It was basically talked about as being the most realistic depiction of that scene that's ever been, which is probably why you picked that. And enough veterans said, "Yeah, I can't." Trigger warnings. Yeah.
Exactly. Oh yeah.
Do you want your stork trivia for tonight?
Sure.
So, of the soldiers that landed on Normandy, one of them was James Doohan from Star Trek, who played, Scotty.
Scotty.
And he, in the battle, lost a finger, like his ring
I
finger.
did not know that.
And so you never see it in
They shoot around it.
Yeah, but yeah, so he was not just a veteran, but he had a Purple Heart from it, and so it's James Doohan was much more of a badass than you probably imagined at the time.
And he's not actually Scottish.
No.
His accent is so authentic.
Well, he's like second generation or something. There were enough people in his family that he drew upon it. But
you actually hear his normal speaking voice in the
Magnum PI. Yeah.
No. In the
Golden Girls.
Not a Return of the Ark. Yeah, he played Blanche.
when what's her name was sick.
Yeah.
He stepped in for a little bit. Anyway, I'm gonna go back to the.
Hey, why don't you?
But I usually run GURPS or other games that aren't D&D because of most of the reasons you would understand. Hear, hear.
Yeah.
I do know 5e, and I am more than capable of running it. But would any of you recommend a different system for complete newbies? I don't want to run GURPS because I want them to be able to make their own characters. And I don't want to scare them away with my GURPS collection.
He's probably biased. He's going to ease them into it. I know there's GURPS Lite, but there's still,
Lady, do you want to see my GURPS collection?
Get off!
I used to have a stack
Get
of
off
books.
the subway!
I used to have this big stack of GURPS books. I had big
I'm
stack.
just kidding. I honestly think that he probably should run 5e for them.
I agree.
They're brand new. That's really the coin in the realm.
They asked for D&D, give them D&D.
Yeah.
And it's a good version. It's a good addition.
And it's
good enough.
it will be good for them because not only will they, get thrown into like the deep end of the pool, but it will allow them post game to be able to make references to their first game experience, and they'll say, "Hey, I played a D&D for the first time," as opposed to saying, "I played GURPS for the first time."
And people have a general understanding of what they're supposed to do with D&D as opposed to just GURPS. What am I supposed to do? Anything you want. Oh, no.
Right.
And already we started with analysis.
Well, yeah, I mean, the fact that you're giving them character classes,
Yes.
I think for new characters is probably a pretty good idea. Give them an
what I'm saying.
archetype
You
they
gotta
can
raise
build.
your
They can
classes,
build
yeah.
around.
Yeah.
Can you hand me the bear?
Huh? Oh.
Thank you. But I mean, and then they're asking for it, so I just give it to them.
Yes, that's what I'm saying.
And if they say, "How did I survive falling 50 feet from a pit?" then say, "Well, there's other games we can play if you want to actually have gotten hurt."
Right. Well, once they grok that and they're like, this is so unrealistic. You're like, oh, really? GURPS, anyone?
The other thing that he asks is, what should he not do? How should he change up his GM style, if at all? Keep the plot line pretty linear. Don't I know that a sandbox is something you'd want to do, but make it pretty clear in terms of what their objective is. They're going to go all around it anyway, but you don't need to get too advanced on it if it's their very first time. Give them a straightforward adventure as their first, and then see how they go about it. I mean, if they start going to the edges and all that, then you know that they could handle a sandbox environment. But if it's their very first time, try to keep it pretty, not
Linear?
simplistic. Yeah, but keep it linear. Keep it straightforward. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of good stuff is that way.
Yes. And? Because these guys are all video gamers.
It moved.
Because these guys are all video gamers and they're used to very linear storylines, give them that. Because that's what we're going to be comfortable with.
Sure.
Keep them in their comfort zone. Don't take them too far out. However, the wonderful thing about RPGs is that...
RPGs are wonderful things.
rocket propelled grenades? Is that you can...
I made a Tigger reference and
You
you
did.
didn't. It caught you off guard.
I know.
Yes!
I'm trying to finish my sentence here.
He can't.
Is that you can pull up their backstories.
Yep.
So make sure that your characters, more than just make their character, give you stuff as a character to pull on their backstories. Because if you're playing WoW, you're not going to be used to what? Why are you laughing?
Someone in the chat room. Tigger warning.
Tigger warning.
Who said that?
That's
Who
a
said that?
T-shirt,
Cloak 72.
dude. That's a T-shirt right there. Tigger warning and just. Because that's something they're not going to expect. Yes, their adventure is going to be linear, but then when their mom shows up with a rolling pin, saying
Right.
you haven't paid us in weeks, and where are they? And they're going to be like, why are you doing this to me? But you know what? That's the beauty of a role-playing game, is that all of this stuff that you gave me, I can now use with you.
Right.
And it will give them a taste of, instead of just having a linear gameplay that you can then go off and do quests and find the person with the exclamation point and come back and get experience, there's this other element. But ease them into it because they're not going to be used to it at all. I'm reminded of when we did 4E all those years ago out here with like 11 people, and we had a bunch of video game players that were used to playing WoW, and they weren't really comfortable or sure of how to do the whole role-playing part. Mm-hmm. And it was kind of a revelation for all of us, for the experienced role players, and then for the video game players. And we kind of came to a meeting at I think, in game style where it all meshed, but they didn't. It was like, what's this off-camera stuff? We're not just going to go out on quests. We're going to talk to people. I don't know how to talk to people, and they weren't really comfortable doing it. But by watching other people do it, they kind of figured out what this other thing was. It's an interesting thing. We take it for granted.
As the GM, you need to be proactive, especially if you're dealing with people who've never played a role-playing game before.
Yeah.
Make characterizations for your NPCs. Become your NPCs and talk to the players in character.
Yeah.
Addressing them by character name. And do everything you can to encourage them. Because we've always talked about the fact that especially when you first start playing, there's a sort of, I don't want to look like an idiot wall you have to sort of break through at some point. And if the GM is already starting doing that, you're already sort of giving them permission to it's okay for me to act like a moron. We're all here to act like morons.
Right, and then if the NPC is this weird, wild character, they're going to feel that they can ask interesting questions, and then it's going to break free from the whole, well, it's a linear story, so I need to follow the storyline. They're going to follow, wait, you have kids at home? Wait, all of a sudden, now the story's taking a turn, and they're going to be okay with that. It's a whole different animal.
Next thing you know, the guy's house is on fire.
Right? So as a GM, do what you can to create memorable experiences with interesting NPCs, with actual personalities and characterizations, so your players can kill them.
That's exactly right.
And that's probably going to happen, so be prepared for that as well, as a GM, because they're not used to this.
I joined the army to go to interesting places, meet fascinating people,
and kill them.
I'm really glad that you picked up on that one, by the way.
It's a mixed bag. But see, you're already prepared because you already have this whole list of, this is what they do, this is what I'm prepared for, this is what I think. I think that, for the most part, I don't even know why you're telling us. You pretty much have got all this down. You already know what to look out for. You already know what you should do. I'm going to say, because these guys are going to attach themselves to a plot hook, you don't need to worry about that. What I think you should do is attach yourself to complicating their backstories and complicating their life in role-playing ways rather than worrying about the plot hook, because they're going to find one and they're going to go with it.
You all saw it. The orphanage attacked me.
It had a gun.
That's my 2 bits.
There you go. I think he'll be fine.
Yeah,
he'll be fine.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. Other doc, Jim. Yes, that Jim had suggested throwing in a couple left turns or a couple curveballs in there and see how they react to them. Nothing critical, but just to see, kind of test how they're going to handle whether you need to remain linear or if things can kind of go.
Sure.
They're also going to do weird things like they're going to meet in and immediately bond because they know it's a raid.
Right.
So they're just going to I don't care. It's a pickup group. We're going to go.
Exactly.
And they're not going to worry about whether they should trust anybody or else or not. And they're not even going to try to backstab each other. Maybe, but I doubt it.
Right.
They're pretty much just going to attach themselves to that plot hook and go.
Thank you very much for the email.
Good luck, Matthew.
Matthew. And let us know how it comes out.
Does space combat have to be boring? From Harold. Dear Happy Jacks Forum, I never thought it would happen to me. Wait, wrong letter.
Happy Jacks Forum.
My gaming
I
group
get it.
had a lot of campaigns fail to launch. See what he did there? Fail to launch over the years, but no setting eluded us more than Star Wars. One of the complicating factors was always space combat.
Bad.
Tell me if this sounds familiar. You and your party of spacefaring adventurers hop aboard a vessel. Suddenly, you are beset by hostile ships. The pilot starts rolling to evade or escape. The gunner is rolling to attack the enemy ships. The engineer is rolling to keep the ship in one piece. Everyone else is just hoping not to die. We never really found a good way around this problem. Space combat is boring. Half the players are sitting in the background with nothing to do and no way to contribute, but even the players with defined roles tend to have only a single thing. They'll roll over and over until combat is over. The specialization element also gets frustrating. Build an ace pilot, and he's likely to be useless when he steps off the ship.
right.
Build a character with lots of useful skills off the ship, and he's likely to be hiding in the background when space combat starts. Perhaps there are other systems which handle it better, or is ship-to-ship combat inherently the least interesting portion of a sci-fi RPG? Personally, I don't care if it's inclusion just because of how it can go wrong very easily. I played an FFG Star Wars game at a con once. The party had accomplished its mission and was escaping in our ship, pursued by TIE fighters. That is, until the GM accidentally rolled crits against us, blowing up the ship, killing us all horribly, and ending the game in a spectacular anticlimax. Take a drink. That ending warrants it.
You know what? It's really hard to kill people in the FFG Star Wars game.
Unless you're on a ship and then roll a crit. And then the whole ship
Even if
blows
they,
up.
I'm gonna bet you.
All right.
I'm gonna bet you that's super, super, super unlikely. Maybe even impossible. I'd have to crack open one of those books. I'd rather not.
Are you smelling shenaniganing?
I think the GM may have thought that was going to be a fantastic
A
ending.
denouement?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my guess. Go read the, did you read
Shenanigans?
the, read the PS.
Oh, well, okay, yes. The PS is... PS, Baltimore area gamers looking for a con, Charm City Game Day on July 28th, which is, I don't know,
Next weekend.
soonish.
Next weekend.
Saturday.
Go to charmcitygameday.com for more info. And even if you miss the con, might as well go anyway.
Now, I think there's only so much you can do with space combat.
Yes, in any system.
Now there is, and it is pretty much a lot of people rolling dice
Yes.
in most of the games that I'm familiar with.
in any system.
That's kind of what you're doing.
Yeah.
But this guy's going to roll, and that might give a bonus to this guy. So then this guy gets to roll with his bonus, and maybe that guy gets to roll. I mean, and it's very rarely more than that. But then again, so is combat.
Yeah.
What crossed my mind is that it's not really the space combat that is the scenario that's the problem. It's your mileage may vary, but what I am thinking about is the fact that you're having the exact results of a failure to be driven or to only be affecting the pilot or the engineer. And what I mean by that,
Yeah. Huh?
no, hear me out.
Okay.
So, using Star Wars as the analogy for this, okay? So, Millennium Falcon takes off, right?
Yes.
Chewie's flying, all right? Han runs in and says, okay, we're not out of this one, kid. And so they go off and they're shooting, all right?
Right.
So, even though he's the pilot and Luke's not the pilot, they're both now shooting, right? They now have activities, right? And now, Chewie and Leia are now flying it. So Leia is now put in a situation that she's not in her comfort zone, right? She's a different type of
Co-pilot.
character. Right, she's acting as a co-pilot. And what are the droids doing? So the droids are basically determining, oh, there's this problem, there's that problem. And yeah, they're acting as engineers, but the problems that they're having requires both of them to do that.
Right, there's fires that they have
Right,
to put out.
and actually, if you think about Empire Strikes Back, again, going to the same analogy, the light speed was off. So while Lando is trying to keep them safe, and while Leia is trying to stabilize Luke, the droids are trying to find a way to bring warp speed back online. So
You said warp speed.
did I say warp speed?
Almost.
Warp
Almost.
drive.
You went
light
one.
speed.
Yeah,
Light.
it's okay.
Ludicrous speed.
Ludicrous.
There you go. They've gone plaid! Another game, or a movie that most people have never seen.
For a good reason.
Yes.
Sucks.
But the point being is that
You can direct all hate mail to me. Not a big fan of Spaceballs.
we'll talk on about that. But the point being is that the failures are being driven, are being a little too linear in terms of the consequences for them. I know I'm talking dirty hippie,
Right.
but it's better to break up what the consequences of the failures are amongst all of the players.
Sure.
So, and even better when you get people out of their comfort zone. When you say, okay, I'm going to have the Jedi Knight be the one to actually have to do the medical training. It's like, well, I don't know how to do that. Well, whatever their skills are, try to see, is there a way to put them in a situation? Don't railroad, of course.
That's the tricky thing, is finding those situations for those people to have a moment
right.
in space combat.
It's tough, and it's not just space combat. I mean, Spirit of 77, there's a lot of driving combat, right? I mean, it happens, and we do have the specific role of the good old boy who is, tending to drive, but it's always best when you have a situation to say, okay, we're going to make the glam rocker be the driver for this particular scenario. So try to break up what the kinds of consequences that they may experience.
There is a delineation with Spirit of 77 and even with Star Wars, which is Millennium Falcon is a crewed ship. The Empire's the Emperor ships are all crewed ships, but the X-wings, Y-wings, and stuff are individuals.
Yes.
So you can make it much more interesting if you keep your fighters or whatever on individual ships and doing individual things.
Kind of like a Battlestar Galactica scenario?
Exactly. So you have
assuming they can all fly.
But that makes it interesting too.
If they can.
If they don't have the skill for it, and no,
he's absolutely right.
You can still make rolls even if you don't have the skill at it.
Sure.
You may not be good at it, but you can still do stuff, and it makes it more interesting. Like, I'm going to hang out back here while you do the trench run. I won't hit anything out here.
Stay in target.
Right.
Stay on target.
And that's a caveat that you can try to do, but because Traveler, Star Wars is all based on being a crew, it's really hard to make sure that your whole crew has something interesting to do, that they can contribute to a combat. You can also, another caveat, which is make them, the ships aren't doing anything, you actually have to go and board them. Now, a boarding thing is an entirely different scenario. Now, all of a sudden,
that's like fighting in a basement.
That's siege warfare, right? Now, you have to come in, you have to land, you have to break in, and then you're fighting level to level, and that's much more interesting.
That's some scary shit
than just ships flying around and trying to shoot at each other. And then, as a last resort, if you really need something to do, it can just break down to a miniatures game, and now it becomes tactical.
Well, okay. How about this?
And that's an option, because some people really love to move miniatures around and work out the attack velocities and all that stuff too, but it's not ideal. Go ahead.
No.
I had to finish that thought.
Good thought. Another way to look at it is that, is it really, and again, this is totally looking at it from a PBTA way of looking at the problem, but is it really worth rolling out the aspects of the space combat or the escape, for instance? Like, does it really matter for us to say, okay, I'm rolling one escape, now I'm rolling two escape because I'm being chased? Or is it better to just say, you know what, this is only going to be involving one particular player, let's see, let's bring it down.
See, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Think about, space combats are never this round robin. It's like every character on the ship is going to have their little moment when the focus is on them, and I would be more inclined to say, do it in that sort of a way, to say, okay, the ship's being fired on, you're the pilot, what do you want to do?
Yeah.
I'm going to try to evade. Okay, go ahead and make your roll. I failed. You're the
Engineer?
The engineer, or you're in charge of damage control. There's a breach on deck 3. What do you want to go? What do you want to do? Oh, I'm going to run over. And then just make it almost like action consequence next person, action consequence next person. Now you may not necessarily hit everybody, but you might.
There was a game that I saw at a con. I thought its name was Space Fury, and I may be wrong, but what was really cool about it was that it would be two ships fighting one another. But what would happen is that, it wasn't actually like a role-playing game. It was really a dice rolling game. But here's the deal, is that, okay, you are the engineer, I'm the pilot, and you're the weapons officer. Yeah, weaponeer. So we all have our own sets of dice. And so basically you're rolling, or I'm rolling because I'm the pilot. And I'm like, oh, crap, I got a snake eyes. So I hand the die to you, and you're trying to roll to fix it, and you're shooting, and basically everybody's rolling dice to be able to achieve their effectiveness. And so when there's a failure, it goes to a different player. And I would love to
That's
find
a great mechanic.
It's so awesome, but I've never been able to crack how I would want to put that into a role-playing game.
Right.
Because
Submarine warfare.
Yeah. Well, who are you rolling it against, though? I mean, it's tricky. It's
Yes,
something I've
fair
wanted
enough.
to do, and
Fair
I've
enough.
thought about it, but I don't know how yet to figure that really into a nice little way of doing it. I'd love actually to do it for like a Mad Max scenario.
Yeah.
Where
Or-
basically
yeah.
it's like, okay, we are all rolling because we're being chased by the
What I like about it is it works well with groups. It works well with a crew.
Yeah.
Instead of just individuals, because Mad Max, everybody's in their own individual car. You can tailor that.
Yeah.
But with you have a crew full of people, and they're dropping depth charges on your submarine, and it goes off, and off it goes. So you're rolling against the depth charges, and then trying to solve it as he goes. I can see how that could be really, really fun. But eventually, it's like, how does it end? And
Right.
and yeah, do you catch everybody? Does everybody get something
Right.
to do?
Not sure yet.
Nope, not still on the fence. See, again, so you found an outlier to maybe solve the problem. Here's the thing: 90% of the time, space combat's boring still with rules as written, unless you want to house rule it with this cool thing, the Space Fury.
Well-
We have the problem with Traveler. I'm on record as saying space combat is boring. Avoid it at all costs.
Right. I
Even-
think generally you should, and I think resolving it in a couple of roles, getting to the consequences part of it is
Yeah.
probably the most important thing.
And the only way I can think of, and I'll reiterate it again, is making space combat. You guys aren't equipped to damage each other at these distances. The only way you can do it is to board. And now the game becomes one-on-one again.
Well, if you're boarding, you're not at far distances.
There is
Yeah, close enough.
and I believe it's now available, a Forged by the Dark version of the space opera scenario called Scum and Villainy. And it takes Blades in the Dark scenario where you're all on a crew and puts it into that environment. I haven't had a chance to try it out yet or go through it, and so maybe Gina would be a good one to ask because
Yeah.
she's she's played everything. But I'm really curious to see how they answered that particular scenario.
Right.
You know?
Sometimes with a situation like this, I like to reframe the question.
Sure.
It's like, why is space combat any harder than ship combat?
Well, I think one of the
Like if
space
you're on
combat is ship combat.
Well, I know that, but somehow when you're on a yacht
mean,
and another yacht
you mean
is
in-
coming at you, no, actual just like sailing ships, like maybe pirates,
It's the same problem.
kind of. But somehow when you're playing pirates, or maybe you're all a bunch of Thurston Howells trying to get over
Well, when
each
I-
other's yachts.
when I
it's
ran-
much more interesting that somehow than space combat.
When I ran Vast Dominions, the ships are literally cutouts that move along the combat map.
Yeah.
But the players are doing what the players would do during combat anyway. They're firing because that's literally you get the ships close and then you fire and shoot at each other until one side.
What I was getting at, I think,
Go
wondering
ahead.
if there's an expectation that we think that space combat is going to be glorious and amazing and full of lasers but that's all visuals and special effects.
I
think
wonder-
the reality of it is.
I
it's
wonder
two ships
if
passing
the
and shooting each other.
getting every one of the player characters contributing on a ship combat is the wrong way to go with it because all you're doing is making it too long. If it was simply a piloting role or a gunnery role on either side, and you said, "Okay, you won the piloting role, so the gunner gets a bonus of +2. Go ahead and roll." Okay, the enemy gunner gets this. All right, you've disabled their ship. Now what do you want to
I
do?
think you might be right.
And just resolve it in a couple of rolls,
And now
then-
you board. And now the
just
interest starts.
get to the consequence.
Yes. Yes.
Get to the consequence
Yes.
of either winning or losing the combat.
To be blunt, is that satisfying for the player level? And I'm not. I don't have.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I hear a lot of people complain about space combat being boring. So maybe just make it as short, and don't have to involve everyone. Because instead of having 5 players roll, maybe you only have 1 or 2 players roll, and just get to the point where now we know the combat's resolved. Here's the result. How are you going to handle it? You're going to board the ship,
Right.
Or you're being boarded, or you're in a vac suit outside in the middle of the space. How are you going to handle it?
Or again, reframe the question. I mean, you have a whole game that has an entire mechanic evolved around chasing, in cars and stuff. Why is that any different than a spaceship? Why are 4 Mustangs any different than TIE fighters?
Well,
You can get
no.
the minutia of it, but my point is sometimes it might be interesting to look at a sailing game and see how they solve the same problems. Look at a car.
Well, I think
Wars
it's a part of
game
that. No.
To see how they solve the problems. Because
So if we were driving a car, though, no, this is
It's linear, as
And,
opposed to-
I'm not going to go into semantics, but
Yeah.
but the deal is that for a vehicle like that, you would, even if you are, I'm sitting in the back seat, and my character is, Rod Stewart, whatever. You can still roll down the window and start being able to be proactive in the combat or the chase of some fashion. For space, it's a little more difficult because you can't really roll down the window. Well, you can once, and you are kind of self-contained into the activity.
I disagree. I have a vac suit on. I pop open the thing and I start taking shots with my stunner.
That's not going to do anything to another ship. There's no game where hand weapons.
Actually,
ships.
my mechanics. Actually, I have an aluminum thing to the stunner.
No, give me no.
My point being that we're already hung up on the fact that cars are different than spaceships.
No. What I'm saying is not that you couldn't, but the fact is that spaceships have this inclination to being, we're saying, one shoot, one gunner, right? Going back to my initial analogy of like the Star Wars Millennium Falcon, is that there wasn't just one. There, obviously they were shooting from the cockpit, but they also had the turrets that granted.
The ventral and dorsal turrets.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually, if you're flying a Y-wing, you actually have a turret.
It's not a Y-wing, actually. That's not a Y-wing.
But
The Millennium Falcon was not a Y-wing.
No, but the Y-wings actually have a turret, and they actually have a gunner, so he's able to actually pivot that turret
Enough!
as well. So you could actually fly by and shoot.
The point being is everybody had an opportunity to take a proactive participation in the combat itself because of the way they structured their ship. Because it had that opportunity.
Sure, yeah. But did that make it less boring? Or did
It kept everyone active. Actually, no.
Or did it just make it longer?
It just made.
I mean, at a table.
In movie terms, it made it more dramatic. In
Sure.
game terms, it makes it longer.
I'm willing to challenge that,
Okay.
but only in practice. I'm not going to say I know this.
Right.
But I'd like to try that out and see whether or not we could actually see in a playtest scenario. I've been playing around with some stuff, but this is something that, to be blunt, has kind of been a challenge for me to wrap my mind around space combat. Because, exactly this. It's like it becomes one person rolling dice while everybody sits around and watch. I don't like that
Just
either.
minimize the number of times you're going to roll the dice. Just say, look at the combat rules for whatever the game is, and double or triple the amount of damage the weapon does, so that you're going to it's going to be finished in one round, one way or the other. It's going to be an interesting result.
So I haven't played Sea of Thieves, but I hear that Sea of Thieves is basically ship to ship. There's a lot of that, and that's where you get the ship kicked out of you. How do they make that interesting?
Did you say ship kicked out of you? That was good. I like that.
There's a few elements to it. You have a pilot who, I mean, it depends which ship you have.
I love how you do the hand gesture.
Well, this is what I'm leading up to because I want to see if there's a way to make that.
There's several things there's several things that can happen. If you have a galleon, you have a crew of 4. Mm-hmm. So you're obviously going to have someone piloting. Mm-hmm. You might have someone taking care of the sails. Mm-hmm. Because if you're taking care of the sails, you can speed the ship up, you can slow it down, you can angle the sails differently. So if you need to make a sharp turn or things like that, then you have to have people manning the guns. So I think you've got 2 or 3 on each side. I don't remember how many.
So right now everything's set up like a traveler encounter, right?
Except
it's in real time.
also when you take damage, you are springing leaks in the hold of the ship.
Right.
So someone has to go down there and get planks of wood and repair the holes, or else your ship sinks.
And this only works because it's in real time. It's not abstracted with
It's
with,
in
with
real
these
time.
storytelling things.
And let me tell you, I have played Sea of Thieves, and if you're playing solo, because you play solo with a sloop, you can have 1 or 2 people run a sloop. You can actually have one person run a galleon, but Jesus. And it's hard in combat.
when
You're one person, it's like, okay, I'm not going to hit anything for the next 5 minutes. I'll let go of the wheel. I'm going to run downstairs and see if I can fix the leaks.
Yep. Now, how do you make that interesting in a role-playing game? Because that's the same problem that everybody has. That's great in a video game. That's great in a movie. How do you translate that?
For one player or just overall?
Either.
For at a table.
How do you
That thing
translate
with
that?
the four.
Yes.
I mean, you could have the different roles happening. I mean, this is what we've been talking about. You have gunners, you have a pilot, you have an engineer.
But that doesn't work. How do you make that visceral feeling? How do you translate that?
You don't do it.
Oh,
just-
no.
You don't do it. A video game isn't a tabletop RPG.
No. Like I said, you change the consequence of saying, okay, it's not just strictly damage to the ship. You're saying that, okay, you fail or you've been hit, it affects this instead. Instead of saying it's affecting the hull, it's affecting the engine, you are not getting away. What are you going to do?
Right.
As opposed to just saying, you're ticking off a box of damage. That's one way, because then the pilot's still having to be the pilot, but now other people are involved. I mean, yes, the engineer would be the person to do that, to fix it, but if you're sitting right here in med lab and there's a big sucking hole right there,
right.
you probably are going to try to fix that right there and then.
That's kind of what I wanted to explore, because I think that you
So
can
you
make
were
ship combat.
baiting me.
Not necessarily. What the thing is, I think that if you make Star Trek, for all its flaws, was
Sure.
basically just a big sub movie, right? They were all stuck in a submarine, and when depth charges happened, there was all this crew stuff that happened. But they were basically the drama was all on the bridge, right? And these guys were talking and dealing with stuff. But the damage to the ship made it interesting, because they're trying to keep this thing afloat or flying, despite all of the drama they had. Sea of Thieves says the same thing. You're trying to keep your sails. You got holes in them. You've got leaks. You're trying to pilot it, and the drama involves out of keeping the ship going, rather than trying to win. But that's the interesting part, is keeping your ship going so that you can come around. I was watching Wrath of Khan, which doesn't hold up, by the way,
No, it doesn't.
at all.
How?
But
Why?
it's
Wait,
just-
whoa.
The acting and the effects, and it's, even the
You
even
are
the
not going to.
scenery.
Do not besmirch Ricardo
When's the last time you
Montalban.
watched it?
Do not besmirch Ricardo Montalban.
When's the last time you watched
Do
it?
not.
I didn't. Those words.
You
never
can
left
talk
my
about
lips.
you can talk about Shatner. You can talk about anybody else, but you do not besmirch Ricardo Montalban.
But the drama of all of that is about what's happening on their ships and
Oh, yeah.
what's happening to the ships, and not necessarily the actual chase. You are more concerned about what Kirk is, the decisions he's going to make, and what's happening, what Khan is going to do, rather than what the crew is doing.
Right.
So, I guess what I'm trying to say is, when you are doing space combat, make it immediate, make it interesting to the people that are playing it, and don't worry about the mechanics and logistics of it.
okay.
Just bypass some of the actual science.
No,
And
sure.
just
Well, that's kind of what I was saying. Get to the ramifications
needs
of the
to
fight
happen to the
rather
speed
than
of
just
plot. Yeah.
Go to the
So, we're going to go on a Star Trek thing, and yeah. You don't. Some people that are actually on the cast do not like Star Trek. Fine, but
do they?
Tim doesn't. He actually preferred the new ones.
Tim Huntley
Yeah,
preferred the new ones.
yeah, and
They're all right.
Well, as opposed to Kadave, who likes the old ones better.
Go on
than
with
the-
your thought here.
But the point is,
Jesus God.
okay, so there's two scenarios. So in 6, okay, they're off saying, okay, we need to update the photon torpedo thingy. That's not my point. Pay attention. I'm not geeking here.
All right.
The point is, Scotty said, I need help. And so McCoy goes with him to say, all right, to be another set of hands that he needed to do it. So even though McCoy is not an expert on this, he's now involved as a player, quote unquote.
Okay.
Same thing
All right.
with like,
Damn it! I'm a doctor, not a warp coil engineer.
right? Well, today you're an engineer. Yeah. And that was one of the best things. It's like, okay, now you are involved in this because I can't do this. You know, you make the scope of the problem to where one person cannot fix it on their
Someone's
own.
got to go hold the Framel rod over.
Yeah,
a
hold this
Tech
here.
2.
You know, and actually, that happened when I was running Return of the Cruise Ship at the Dam, which is available on Drive-Thru RPG, and the ship springs a leak, and so one of the characters has the mechanic ability, right?
Put finger in leak.
Well, that actually became it. So he says,
great-
all right, I'm going to
that's a
take a
great
metal tray and I'm going to hold it up there. And I said, okay, now what are you going to do? I'm going to weld it. Okay?
With what? Your X-ray vision?
If you must know, he did it with the chicken mobile, which had a flamethrower on it.
You had to ask.
I don't know.
All right, but what happened is that he said, I have to weld it. I need somebody else to hold it up while I'm welding it. Yes, it got to a point where a player had to do that and not get burnt from the chicken mobile with the flamethrower out of its beak.
I guarantee you that.
Spirit of 77, kids.
And I guarantee you that's much more interesting.
But now it involves a player
see-
to have to do something that's much more than just, I'm sitting and watching you fix something.
So what have we learned of this from Space Combat? Make it personal.
Make it personal, change up the type of damage or the consequences associated with it, or narrow the scope of it to where it's faster as opposed to taking up a whole lot of time.
I think he's right. Unless you have a bunch of individual fighters and then you can narrate what each one is doing, but that's an entire game session in itself.
Right. I've never heard of one of those things where, like, okay, we're going to play a role-playing game, and then when we get to the combat, we're going to roll out this war game. And I've never heard of one where that has worked.
4E.
You made my point for me.
Oh, shucks.
Pseudo horror story of gaming mediocrity from Craig.
You want me to read it? All right.
And it's long, so I can
Careful.
I can help you with the big words.
Oh, okay.
Or if you want to, like, when you get to a point and your voice starts to go out.
Sure. Greetings, Jackers. Craig, who is Hoodoo on the forums, from the UK here. After the recent emails about bad con games, I wanted to share my own pseudo-horror story, which has become my go-to example of how not to run a con game. I say pseudo-horror story only because it can't really compare to some of the ones you've received in the past. The GM didn't seem like a bad person, just a bad GM, and not from a lack of experience. Before I dive in some context, during my time at uni, I was a regular attendee of the Student Nationals Convention, which brings together university gaming societies from across the country for a weekend of drinking, gaming, chaos, and some more drinking.
Excellent.
The format is a little unusual. Rather than signing up for specific games, you sign up for a category and over the weekend play 2 long-form games, 1 per day, typically lasting around 6 hours.
What an interesting idea.
You also play with the same group on both days, but switch GMs, which was the only reason I didn't just up and leave. So there we were, the Saturday morning of the event. I had ended up in the sci-fi category. Was there space combat? Our group had found the room we'd be in for the next 2 days, and we were waiting for our GM to show up. 10 minutes go by. It's clear he's running late, which isn't too unusual given it's mostly students. 15 minutes. 20.
Uh-oh.
Before he finally arrives carrying a stack of hero books and character sheets.
Oh, no. So session 1 is character gen.
He sits down, introduces himself, and promptly ignores us for the next 10 minutes as he finishes off the character sheets. Going forward, this would form the core of my how to run a con game mantra. Rule 0, do your effing prep. I'm going to repeat myself here. Do your effing...
Do you want me to say that for you?
Please.
Fucking.
Prep. I don't believe in a no prep game. Even if you're running the most rules light improv game there is, then you can prep. Read the rules, know how to set up and explain the game, know how the central mechanic works. That's prep. With a game like Hero, finishing the character sheets is most definitely prep, and not something that should be done at the table unless you're giving the players a chance to customize.
Ooh, he spelled it the fancy way with an S.
UK characters, which he didn't. So we're 30 minutes or so in before we even get to see the characters. It's a Traveler-esque space opera setting. There's an uprising on some of the planets, and we're all in a giant space station somewhere near the edge of the combat zone. The characters are pretty typical for the genre, and I go for the one described as an underworld smuggler, thinking I can put a Lando-type spin on him.
Well, hello.
Yeah.
Hello. What have we here? Dude, you're 75!
Having problems with your droid?
I am looking forward to Billy D. Williams in the new Star Wars movie. I don't care who you are. That's awesome.
Are they going to put him in there?
Yeah, in the 9, yeah.
They are?
Yeah!
I thought he should have been the slicer, or introduced the slicer in the last one.
I'm just saying, he's supposed to be in 9. All right, I look down at the character sheet and find I have some 30, or around 30 individual skills. I look at the GM confused. For those of you listening, I made a confused face. He's busy going over something with somebody else. I look back at the sheet. I have close to 30 skills. as he said, and almost all of them are a onesie or a twosie. As far as I can tell, I am the definition of jack of all trades, master of none, already running late. I did not quibble. I've never played Hero before, so maybe this is okay? Seriously, was this okay? To this day, I've never worked out whether the character was actually viable in the system. So characters picked, and we finally start play. We're all in the station. Yay! But we don't know each other. Boo. And then, explosion! Somebody set us up the bomb! Maybe this is the plot. Having to escape a dying space station has it. Nope. The station is okay, but we've all been arrested as potential suspects. Round up the potential suspects!
Round up the usual suspects.
Okay, maybe the plot is escaping.
One of them was Kaiser Sosu. Sisu? Soso?
Soze.
So. Go again!
Kaiser
What-
Soso.
Yeah. Round up the average
The usual
suspects.
average suspects. Here are your winnings.
There we go.
Oh, thank
Okay, thank you. We're quickly cleared of suspicion by a generic NPC, and then a surprising, only because it's stupid twist, hired as security for a top secret mission. We learned from NPC exposition. Hello. My name is NPC Exposition. The bomb was intended for a delegate on one side of the uprising who was passing through the station on the way to peace talks.
Meanwhile, back at the ranch.
Oddly specific.
So, pause for a second.
Yes, pause.
So, is this when we, in this, and this is really a question for you, Hoodoo. So, do you not know that there were peace talks occurring nearby, or was this when he just dropped the plot, the fact that the bomb went off?
He says it was quickly.
Yeah, therefore, as complete outsiders.
NPC exposition.
Yeah,
So there's a long.
Okay.
That's what. So, well, he would have told them that, but he was still finishing the character sheets.
True.
That would have happened in the first half.
Got it, right. Who were almost killed by the explosions. Are obviously both trustworthy and competent enough to be the new security, as the original team are all dead. You survived! You should be in charge!
You people say we don't know you and you're armed. You must be good at this.
So, what the actual... Which brings us to Rule 1, as opposed to Rule 0, which was do your effing prep. Rule 1, unless you have a plot-relevant reason, have the PCs already know one another.
Right? We preach
Oh,
it
yes.
all the time.
Yes. Seriously, we've all been there. You meet at a tavern, accept a job from a mysterious stranger despite not knowing one another. You know, when I get
Or the
offered
strangers.
jobs at
Right.
bars from mysterious strangers, it
All the
usually
time.
I wake up and
I say to myself, well, if I know you, I'm not going to take the job.
Yeah.
But you're a mysterious stranger, and I don't know any of these people. Sold.
yeah, so get
Sign
me drunk
up.
$100 and
Yeah.
So you-
and
you
you're
watch
buying the
some-
hotel room and go on an epic quest only to be stabbed in the back by the douche who is just playing their alignment. That's a cliche that needs to die in a fire. Have I told you my die in a fire?
No,
Classification.
this is a really good reason to do it.
Okay.
That's
But
you.
I agree with that.
That's you.
Okay.
Me?
Yes.
Stabbing people in the back?
No, not stabbing people in the back, but you go down the wrong hallway.
Once.
All right.
I had new powers.
Just the tip.
I thought I could survive. I was trying to move the plot along because everybody was all like, like.
You know, when I go down the wrong hallway, I'm just trying to move the plot along. Just have the characters know one another from the outset. Have bonds between them that explain why they trust one another and aren't waiting for the knife in the back. I won't bore you with the actual plot, in part because I zoned out so much of the game that I can barely remember it. Also, when sometimes I go down the wrong hallway, I can barely remember.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, suffice to say, it made little sense. There was the inevitable attack by separatists who just happened to comprise half of the crew of the ship! The delegate, and thus we
If half
were
the crew,
traveling
they're not
on.
necessarily separatists. They're really more like almost majorists.
Well, actually,
Did you just actually?
no. Then there was a religious cult,
Oh.
and finally, an emergent AI which only one character could actually interact with. Getting back to space combat. No. This is actually a parallel that when you have only one person able to interact with it, that's a flaw with your plot line.
I'm
Yes.
sorry.
And it's better to have it a situation where you can still have, the person who is not supposed to do the talking,
Do the talking.
Right.
Exactly.
and then merriment and antics follow.
Daisy, all for the love
My jack of all trades smuggler, well, of the 30-odd skills I had, I think I ended up using no more than 5 over the course of the session, and most of the time that was in a supporting role. Hence, Rule 2, give each PC opportunities to shine. Actually, I would like to also point out, give each PC opportunities to screw up. That's far more entertaining for
In this
players
game, I'd
and
like to
GM
say
alike.
give each PC an opportunity to leave.
Oh, another no-brainer here, but if there isn't an opportunity for each character to be in the spotlight, then why are they there?
That's right.
A good con game should be filled with opportunities for each characters to do their thing and have an impact on the course of the plot. This game didn't, but as the hours wore on, we learned that the GM loved the characters in their previous adventures that he had just created.
Then why weren't their character sheets finished?
Hold on a moment. It gets worse.
There are numerous previous adventures. It transpired that each of the characters was lifted directly from his long-term campaign that had been running for multiple years, and that the events of this game were the compressed highlights of that very campaign, which provides an instant and easy Rule 3, the con game is not your campaign. So, okay. Pause for a second.
I don't know if I can.
No. So this is an interesting thing. So, when we did the Magnificent Bastards game, okay, so, I really liked some of the concepts, and I have personally thought, I would love to actually take the adventure and take it to like Strategicon or something and see other people play it. I would love to see Mac, as an example, playing Irene Adler or something like that, or Dave, or Kadave playing Phantom Us or something like that. But I don't feel comfortable doing it. Not because I don't think they would do a fantastic job with it, but too many elements of what I perceive of the game itself, like the campaign, are attributed to player actions. Like what you did as Renfield was, I could not expect another player to do it because you were very specific about what you were wanting to do. You wanted to get your papers as your motivation, and then when you attacked the guy on the ship, it's like I wouldn't want to railroad another player into doing that. I didn't know you were going to do it. Thought it was a great move, and I would be very hesitant to that because it's basically chasing the dragon in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't know if I think it was the con that I ended up missing in like 3 or 4 years ago, but we were running L5R, and I wanted to have an adventure. I wanted to run a con game that took place in the same universe at the same time, but with different characters in a different place, but have the results of that con game affect the continuing campaign.
Sure.
And what I had was it was an entirely different adventure on the wall with crab characters, and everyone else was all the player characters were Crane at the time. And it
5E, no, 5 rings. Sorry,
L5R, yeah. And
crab characters. I'm going. What is this? Another Wild Talents? And like Kimmy doesn't tell you what the character sheets are until you sit down.
right.
Thing.
But and they basically had
Don't do that, Kimmy.
no, and they basically had a mission they had to do, and whether they were successful on that mission or not would have results in the ongoing campaign. But that is as close as I would get to meddling with the con game and your home game.
Sure.
I mean that's as close as I would get to meddling between those two things.
Here's what I've learned using the music analogy is that these games are like jazz. You could start out with a melody. So let's say Twinkle Twinkle Little Star, right? And as a GM, you lay that out, and then all these players riff off that, and it's going to make each time you put out Twinkle Twinkle Little Star,
especially with different players,
it's going to be different every time.
Right.
And the joy that you get as a GM and the joy that you get out of these things is laying out that basic premise and then sitting back and watching them riff off of it.
So, actually, you bring up a very interesting point. So, because certain games or adventures I've run multiple times, like the Cruise Ship of the Damned launcher, I've probably run easily, I want to say easily 50 times for, well, it's been around for like 4 years, 3 years or something like that. So I've had the opportunity, and it's usually what I use to introduce people to our system, and characters are pre-gen, whatever. But it's not unlike Westworld in the fact I know certain characters have loops that basically I know that I will have that as a cliche. No, I don't want to say a cliche, but a trope of that particular adventure that I know will happen. But I also know that when that trope comes up, I have no idea what the players are actually
they're
going
gonna
to
react
do.
to it,
Right.
yeah.
Sure.
So it is like jazz. It's that there are certain refrains that may occur,
Right.
but I don't know how it's
there's
going
a loose skeleton. There's beginning, a middle, and end, and maybe a couple of side branches that maybe you've thought about, and that's it. And then these players, they riff off that, and you've built the skeleton, so you still have a place to go. Or like, all right, we're getting to the end of the beginning. We're going to get to the middle part now, and you can move on from there. But these guys are going to. So each time, even though the premise is exactly the same, each one of these games is going to be completely different. And to try to railroad or to shoehorn in the high points of games you've already played into another game, and a con game, is doing your players a disservice and you a disservice. Because you are basically getting rid of the role part of a role-playing game. Now everybody's just playing the game and you're shoehorning them into it. I think it's a much better experience when you just lay out a bare bone things and everybody gets to contribute to this story that we've always talked about. Well, yeah, but that's the problem with this is he already had an agenda. Stuff is going to happen, and I'm putting it all up here because how cool is this? Because we had fun, so why wouldn't you?
I over the course of the last couple of days just rewatched the Dungeon Masters. That was
You mean with Richard Mall?
No, it's a documentary.
That's a pull.
Documentary reality film.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
No, I'm still working on Richard Mall because I think I know what he's talking about, but it wasn't Dungeon Masters. Go ahead.
There's a character. One of the players. It's like reality TV. They picked the 3 most broken toys they could find of role playing gamers, and they made.
How hard was that, though?
Where
Sorry.
did you see that?
I have it on Amazon Prime.
Okay.
It's not in Amazon Prime. I actually bought it. I paid like $9 for it, and I've watched it twice.
Sword and the Sorcerer. That's what you were thinking.
No. There was a. I know what you're talking about,
Okay,
but no. The Dungeon Master was a movie that was done starring Richard Mole, and it actually had been done like about 8 different scenarios and with 8 different directors.
So it's like Twilight Zone, but the
No, it's all
director was
supposed to be like one particular thing, or like one narrative that's cobbled together. Like you here's the bad guy, here are the heroes. You need to.
I might
finish
have to
this
look
out.
this up.
And the strangest thing about this is that at one point they decide they're going to have them at a heavy metal concert, and because the girl was being threatened by the band, and the band was played by Wasp with Blackie Lawless as the big bad guy on it, the heavy metal band Wasp.
Well, I remember Wasp, yeah.
And thinking, that's the strangest thing. Of all the bands that you want to have in this.
That's who they could get.
I guess.
They work cheap.
just saying.
Guar was on tour.
That's funny. Guar was on tour. Sorry.
I don't care how
More popular
cool.
than Wasp.
Oh.
That's true.
I don't care how cool your campaign was. Actually, they are.
I know. I'm not.
No.
It sounded funny, but it's true.
No.
Hey, and they're hardcore because we played the Galaxy the day after a Guar concert.
Yeah.
They broke a urinal.
And
Have you ever seen? You know how much work it would take to break a fucking urinal? And I'm not talking about one of the little bowl kind. This is the large sort of rectangular kind.
Oh.
With the little for your
Oh,
ball cup.
that does take a while.
to be
Oh,
fair,
yeah.
To be fair, it's Guar.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
It may not have been them. It might have been one of their 300-pound fans.
Did you know
Well,
that they did
they're
a side project called
Warhammer
the Ex-Cops? And it was all of them just doing songs as if they were like off-duty cops.
Really?
That whole
Yeah.
thing, that all of those people are creative geniuses. They really are. All of them have got stuff that
I've
they've
heard
been
they're
doing.
actually the residents.
Oh, you want to know? I told this to Gina that I would tell people that when Slipknot was up for a Grammy, which they did win, that when they got the Grammy and they got on stage, that they were going to take off their masks and reveal that Slipknot was really Devo.
That would be awesome.
Wouldn't that have been awesome? Even if it really wasn't the truth. It's like if they had just taken off and there's Mark Mothersbaugh.
Or the Aquabats.
Right.
Oh, but if you would go, oh my God, it's Devo! They've been pranking us.
That's awesome.
That's better than Andy
Totally
Kaufman.
gaslighting us the entire time.
Yes! Oh, that would have been hot.
And then
Now I know it's like what the Boggarts need to do next.
and then the Scooby-Doo team walks out and goes, "Oh, but it's really," and they keep ripping off masks. Yeah.
And then the last thing is the big eyes.
Yeah.
Right? It's the residents. We knew it the whole time.
I don't care how cool your campaign was or how amazing it was when Character X finally got retribution on Big Bad Y. The con game is not your campaign. Now, don't get me wrong. One can inspire the other, but if you, the GM, can't separate the two and let them take divergent paths, then stop and do something original. I, the con player, have no nostalgia for something I wasn't a part of and won't appreciate the jumbled up mess of a plot made up of supposedly awesome moments. Go back to Rule 0, do your prep, and actually plan out a coherent one-shot.
Well said. That's actually very well said. That should be on a fucking T-shirt right there. That
Now
whole thing from Run
based,
Mountains.
now based on all, because all the base belongs to us, based upon all that, my final rule will come as no surprise. Rule number 4, pay attention to your players' engagement. Seriously.
There
it's
should
not-
be an apostrophe after the S. Go ahead.
Actually.
because everybody watching and listening saw that.
Considering the typos in his game, he's just trying to make up for lost time.
Not very many typos.
Seriously, it's not hard. Oh, I hear there's a problem with the examples. Seriously. It's not hard to see if people are actually paying attention. Are they contributing and asking questions? Are they playing on their phone? Or as I was for most of this game, building dice towers? I was so unengaged with the adventure that during our lunch break, I went out and bought extra dice in the trade hall so I could build more stacks.
Okay, whoa. He's so not invested in this game that he actually went out and spent money so he could be even more uninvested.
And then went back to the game.
So that he can be even more uninvested.
That's what you should do. That is what you should do because that way you can write an email. Because you know what the most boring horror story is, I went to a con game, it looked like it was going to suck really bad, so I excused
left.
myself and left. The end.
He comes back. No, he came back armed with
more
a
dice.
bag full of dice so that he could build a mountain of dice in
I
front
hope
of the
it was
GM.
at least D10 so he could challenge himself stacking.
He's like,
So the next time we're at a con, we're at Strategicon or something like that, and we are like somebody is at a boring game. Okay, what we need to do is go back to like Happy Jack's Central, which of course is the bar, and get a mousetrap game, and then sit there and like come back with it under the arm, and while you're sitting there waiting, slowly build out the mousetrap situation.
it should be even more insulting than that. You go, excuse me, and you go out,
buy dice.
come back with like a shopping bag full of dice.
I appreciate you doing
Go
the
ahead,
Dave
and then you
face
just
while doing that.
stack them.
I'm going to sign up for a CA Dave game. I'm going to build dice towers.
And eventually, it's like Pink Floyd. You just build this wall of dice in front of you.
Yeah.
And then when you
Wow, that's awesome! And then at some point, when you just
right,
they all come down, oh, it's your turn to roll, and then they fall down. Oh,
I'm a brick. We're playing hero, right? I'm a brick. 90D, 96. Count body first.
And eventually, as this wall builds up, the GM gets more and more nervous. It's like, oh my god, maybe I should engage him. And eventually, you're just
it's
gone.
like the Jenga. It's like Dread in reverse.
Yes.
Oh my God! That's
Look, there's
the
a dice
best.
mechanic for you. He can thank us later.
I love that.
You guys get to support the Kickstarter next year when he comes up with Dice Wall.
Oh, I am thinking of a new version of
I
Dread.
was kidding.
Called
Don't do this.
No, it's
a bad
Dread for
idea.
kids. It's called Discomfort. And
Discomfort.
You didn't want to do this. You just wanted to say that.
and I wanted to do it while you were drinking
While I was
beer.
drinking beer.
All
Fair
right,
enough.
so-
I appreciate that.
all right.
Someone needs to come up with a dice stacking game that you can play at a boring table.
Challenge
Accepted.
Like a turn-based game where it's like cannot have any verbal thing to it at all. You build up to a certain point when it falls over. You like my
Okay, so that is like the ultimate dick move.
So like you and Bill and Dave are at this terrible game. You guys are both stacking up.
But the
and
way
you're
you do it, no, this is
And
what
you're
you
looking
do.
at each other
So
and
this
like,
is how the
tick,
game
tick,
works.
tick.
We'll get back to this what I swear. But it's like, okay, so Stu is bored of the game. So all Stu has to do is like put the die, the 6-sided die, right there, and that is him saying, I am initiating the game. And then Bill basically puts one and goes,
Right,
I am joining.
right.
And then Dave goes, I am joining as well. And then we slowly do
Yes,
this.
right. That's right.
No, we're playing, and it's like, he has put 3 on him. So, oh my God.
Or depending on what die, it'd be like playing horse. It's like I'm going to stack a D6.
I'm in.
And
This is
2
so-
D10s.
This is so perfect. This is, oh my God, because
And then you have to stack a D6 and 2 D10s, and then something else on top of it. Right.
and I can see after like 3 or 4 years, whole games, GMs are just going to be talking to themselves, reading text, and everybody's stacking dice. It'll be so much more fun for everybody. In fact, I will get to the point where it's like, I don't actually have a game. I'm just going to read your text. You guys play
All
the
right,
game
I'm going to write
for
this
3
up.
hours.
This is going to be on the Monkey Fun website by the end of the week. I will
Excellent.
do it.
Done.
All right.
Done.
It'll be just, it's not for sale or anything.
a
It's just like,
sub-game.
it's the sub
Right.
game. It's
Yes.
the context game.
It's a dark web game.
All right, dark web game. All right. Should I have tried to re-engage with the GM and his story? No, you did the right thing.
Yes,
Probably, but by that point, I checked out and just didn't give an F. While
You
the
know what?
GM
You know what? He
Fuck.
actually did more than the rest of us because he went on bot dice.
I know.
Justify. That is awesome. Yeah.
While the GM was either. By the way, we're just kidding. We always support GMs in any convention, and if you choose to play a game or run a game at a convention, we support you in that endeavor. Or just didn't care. So that is the basis of my do's and don'ts for con games. I've added a few more since then, such as all characters should have female, male, neutral, and blank options
Yep.
for names. And actually, that's true. And sometimes you don't even realize you're doing it. And
Yep.
whenever, like, I've created pre-gens and players have pointed that out, I always fix that because sometimes you don't know. You don't realize.
You know what
that
I
you're
do? You know what I do now? I don't even give them names.
Right. That's easy
You determine
solution.
if it's male or female,
That's
and you
absolutely right.
determine what their name is.
You hand them stats and go, "What's your name?" and then you write that down. That's it. That's
Yeah.
the easiest solution right there.
Yeah, that's easy. No, sir. No, sir.
no,
because
no.
I have been in games where it's like all you have to do is come up with a name. I don't know.
I'll have a,
I'll
have a
remember
deck-
Watson's.
I'll have a
Any
deck
name.
of index cards.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, pick one card, and that's
Yeah.
your name. You don't get to
Write
change
in
it.
your middle name. All right. Write in your mom's name. All right. I'm going to use your name. How about that?
At that point, all the rest of the players are stacking the dice and playing the Dark Knight game.
There you go. And so the few times I attended the Nationals after, it was always as a GM, and I hope I never ran a game that was that mediocre. So maybe something good did come from that game. Just a shame it wasn't a fun lesson to actually learn.
Oh, well.
Craig. So we have now talked about that little story. And
That was fantastic.
I'll go on record as saying is that every lesson is hard learned.
yeah.
Otherwise, you don't remember it. There is no such thing as an easy lesson. You're like, oh wow, that's really inspiring.
I'm just laughing because it's like, yeah, our first marriage is definitely taught us that, didn't it?
It takes a couple of times when you realize
Yeah.
that
I'm not good at being married. Well, why let that stop
or,
you?
or marrying crazy people. Maybe that's a bad idea.
Well, after the third time, it's you.
That's what the therapist said. To come to find out, you're the crazy one in the
Oh,
relationship.
am I? Oh. I'm just kidding, of course.
You've only been married twice.
Yeah.
It's a. I enjoy these horror stories because I learn more from them than I ever do from actual like functional
Bad
stories.
examples are the best examples.
They really are. They truly are.
Aren't we
Cautionary tales.
proof?
Yes, we
Cautionary
are.
tales.
All right. Hey, let me just say thank you again to Easy Roller Dice.
Yep.
Our friends at Easy Roller Dice. Easy Roller Dice.
Say it again. Oh, he's adjusting his mic. He doesn't realize he's still on.
I know I am. It fell off, so...
EasyRollerDice.com/cup if you want to get the oversized dice cup with the lid. And was it like 50? What is it, like 50?
So when you're building your dice
50
tower,
16 millimeter D6s.
What's the URL? What's the URL?
EasyRollerDice.com/cup. And it is... Oh, shit.
please don't shit in the cup.
Say...
EasyRollerDice.com.
You know, there is that video on
Nope.
the...
Don't go there.
Don't go there. That's a different.
I'm just saying.
They're giving us money to support their thing. Don't go there, man. Shame on you. I blame you.
Anyway,
I'm blaming you, Dave.
I would like to thank them for sponsoring the show, and also if you want to support the show, support the sponsors.
They're actually a very great product. I think most of the dice I have these days, Easy Roller.
I love this. I love these things.
It's
I
very nice.
love these things because now I've got and for cons. I can pack. It holds a lot of dice. You can put a lot of dice in there.
does.
I mean, obviously not your whole collection, but you put a bunch of dice for Game Con. Throw them in there. It's in your own dice tray. It's great. It's fantastic. I love them.
We don't even own stock in the company. I actually
Don't-
like them. I do like them.
I'm not only the Hair
I'm
Club
not
president.
the president.
I'm a client.
No, that's not endorsing it at all.
I have a lovely head of hair under this bald wig. What?
I'm blaming you. This one's
What
sideways.
did I do?
It is. It's your
You
fault.
were here.
You fart acid.
And spit love. That's what I do.
All right.
No, spitting is never love.
You know, going back to that video.
Ew.
What?
Ew.
Ew. Ew.
All right. Thank you for joining us for season 22, episode 8 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Dave.
Solid, Daddy-O. I love this song. It's the best song ever.
Name? Thanks.
Stork. Thank you very much for joining us, and we'll see you next Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, right here on this same fat channel. Thank you again to EasyRollerDice.com, EasyRollerDice.com/cup, if you'd like to join in that Kickstarter. Very exciting. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll leave you with a song. And
MonkeyFunStudios.com.
thank you very much. We'll leave you with a song.
And dragons, hero pathfinder, fatal savage wild, evil plots will be usurping, though we could do with less burping. Happy Jack's podcast will be douchebags
With 40 fine sailors, we left our dear England. We sailed through the seas to find fortune unseen. But all of the while, we longed for old England, her hills and her valleys and meadows so green.
But the hills could fall and the valleys flood, the meadows burn to black. For England's gold is our lassie's dear, and that is why we come back.
The Spaniards have wealth with their endless armada, their hulls fully laden with silver and gold, with jewelry and marbles and statues and idols, bejeweled with emeralds and riches untold.
But gold and jewels are not warm in the arms, and silver turns to black. For England's gold is our lassie's dear, and that is why we come back.
In Jamaica we drank rum as dark as the night sky, find brandies in Lisbon and wines throughout Spain. Though we saw the insides of 1,000 port taverns, we longed to taste England's ales once again.
But the fields of party could wither away and leave us dry as sack. For England's gold is our lassie's dear, and that is why we come back.
For ages we sailed, our memories faded, of old England's beauty, the land belonged. Forgotten were meadows, the valleys so deep, and the hills and the rivers, the visions were gone.
But smiles so warm we had not forgot, and eyes that shine through black. For England's gold is our lassie's dear, and that is why we come back. But the hills could fall and the valleys flood, the meadows burn to black. For England's gold is our lassie's dear, and that
why problem make when you no problem have you don't want to make?
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
I've got information, man. New shit has come to light.
You know, that's just like your opinion, man.
I can't believe these men may control the fate of the Middle East.
I got a pistol in my pocket. I got a pickaxe slung across my back. I got nowhere that I have to be. I got no boss man who's waiting there for me. I gotta have a tank of gas. I got a pack of slouches on my ass. I got a knife made of rust. I got some friends that I can't trust. So I got a pistol